Hello, hello, Sarah of SEK Handmade here, and today I'm going to share with you how to make a puff shell stitch. Guys, if you are looking for the ultimate texture, you are looking for puff stitches. They are so much fun, and this is a great variation on a puff stitch. Let's go. You guys, I feel like you can't go wrong with the amazing texture that puff stitches give. There's just something really unique about the loft and interest that puff stitches add to any project. For a puff shell, you are going to need a multiple of 3 stitches. And then I like to anchor it on each side with a stitch to give a more straight and finished edge on your project. So if you are making a swatch, first I would recommend doing a base row of I did half double crochets. So I did a multiple of 3 plus my 2 stitches to anchor on either side, and then 1 additional chain for my half double crochet. So go ahead, set yourself up with that, and then work a row of half double crochets, and then you're going to be all ready to make your first row of puff shell stitches. So I have my row of half double crochets here, hopefully just like you have yours as well. I am going to chain 1. And then, like I said, I like to anchor my rows of the puff shells with an end stitch. And so I'm just going to work a half double crochet into that first stitch. Just like that. Now, the puff shell is worked over 3 stitches. Follow carefully here, but it is worked into 1. So you're going to skip a stitch, work your shell into the next stitch, and then skip a stitch. That gives your shell room to spread out. You can see all these nice fluffy stitches need a little room. So you're going to first work a puff stitch. You're going to skip a stitch, work a puff stitch into the next one. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop one more time, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, and then look at all those fluffy loops. You're going to yarn over, tip your hook down, and pull through all of those loops to make your puff stitch. Then you're going to chain 1, and then you're going to work another puff stitch into the same stitch. Yarn over, insert into the same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, make sure your hook is tipped down, and pull through all of those loops. And that is your first puff shell. Now, the last thing you need to do is skip a stitch. If you're making another puff shell right next to it, you're going to start with skipping a stitch as well. So you're ending up with 2 skipped stitches in between each of yours. So this skipped stitch goes with my last shell. This skip stitch goes with the next one. And so yarn over, insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, one more time, and that's my puff stitch. Yarn over, pull through all of them, chain 1, and make another puff in the same stitch. And pull through, and there you go. I'm going to make 1 more puff shell in this row and then finish up with another half double crochet to anchor my row just like the beginning. And then I want to show you how to work back across these shell stitches because it can be a little confusing and it can be a way that you just end up with the wrong number of stitches in your next row, and that's very frustrating. So I'm going to finish up this row and then we'll talk about working back across those shells. To work back across the row, I'm going to chain one and turn my work. I'm going to start by working a half double crochet into the half double crochet from the row below. Now, each puff shell is made up of 3 stitches, a puff, a chain, and a puff. And you want to make sure you're working into each of those stitches. So I'm going to start by working into my first puff. So I'm going to yarn over, do a half double crochet in my first puff stitch. You can work into your chain. I personally find it really easy to work into the chain space. So I just go in between my puff stitches there and work another stitch. That's my second stitch. And then I'm going to work into the second puff stitch. So that's my third stitch of my 3 stitches to my puff stitch. Let's try that again. I'm going to do 1 stitch into my puff, 1 stitch around the chain, and 1 stitch into the second puff. 1 more to do. 1 into the first puff, 1 stitch around the chain, 1 stitch into the last puff, and then remember I'm anchoring with a stitch at each end, so don't forget that one. My final half double crochet goes into my half double crochet from the previous row. And that's how you work back into it to make sure you end up with the same number of stitches. And that is how you crochet a puff shell stitch. Such a fun stitch to use. If you want to dive right into a pattern containing this stitch, I've got links in the description below to several of my patterns that use this stitch, and more coming soon because I love the texture that it gives. It is always my goal to help you grow confidently in your craft. I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on any of the tutorials I share. I would love it if you would like this video and share it with a friend who might enjoy this stitch as well. Thank you again for joining me today, and happy crafting!